Alright, Internet, let's get into the Vrains! Today, I want to talk about rituals and dimensions, and whether or not Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is set in a ritual dimension. Now, the story of Playmaker and the Link Vrains simulation is a weird one to fit into the series chronology. Its immediate predecessor, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, takes place in a universe where reality has been forcibly divided into separate dimensions, and where each version of Earth specializes in a particular method of special summoning: Standard, Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz, with the Standard dimension eventually being reclassified as the Pendulum dimension. Over the years, this has led to the obvious question of whether a ritual world might exist alongside the other four, and after more research on the subject than I care to admit, I found one small detail. A tiny clue. One crumb of information that has me absolutely convinced that it does. Reveal trap card! Dimensional barrier! Alright, let me explain. Dimensional Barrier is a trap card first released in the Arc 5 era booster pack, Invasion Vengeance. Its effect allows the user to declare a type of monster and negate the summoning and effects of that type of monster for the rest of the turn. Most importantly, the allowable monster types are Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Ritual, implying that Ritual energy was mostly isolated to one little dimension of its own alongside the rest of the summoning powers. But even if we accept this card that's never appeared in the anime at face value, how do we get from a ritual dimension exists to Playmakers playing in the ritual dimension? Well, to start, there's simple process of elimination. Vrains just doesn't seem to fit with any of the dimensions established in Arc 5, with the technology seen throughout the show appearing to be both more sophisticated in some areas, but less in others, suggesting that industrial development occurred on a completely separate track from those worlds seen previously. Even the game of dual monsters has regressed. In the first 5 series, duelists wishing to perform Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz summoning were able to do so relatively uninhibited, so long as they had the necessary cards to pull it off. But Vrains introduced some pretty specific limitations on advanced summoning, namely that players couldn't summon more than one Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster without the aid of newly introduced Link monsters. Why? I mean, the real-world explanation mostly has to do with Konami making some fatal errors in the long-term planning of their game. But in continuity, why are other monsters suddenly dependent on Link monsters? Well, it makes sense when you consider this in terms of energy. In Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, we learn that dueling energy, or Ener-D as they call it in the dub, is a measurable phenomenon, something which Arc 5 reaffirms when the Leo Corporation begins covertly tracking duelists by monitoring the power output their cards generate when played. And while duelists are able to perform each summoning method in any dimension, it is suggested that each type of energy is limited outside of its home dimension, meaning that fusion energy, and therefore the ability to fusion summon, probably has some limits outside of the fusion dimension. Ditto for Synchro and Xyz. Enter Link monsters. Playmaker and the other Link Vrains duelists frequently refer to the process of Link summoning as the closing of a circuit, which is important because of how they facilitate the use of extra deck monsters. An electrical circuit is simply an interconnection network that creates a path for an electrical current. Or, put simply, a circuit conducts energy from point A to point B. While there might be a deficit of Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz energy in the network of Link Vrains, duelists can pass more readily available power through their Link monsters and onto their other advanced monsters. But what's the one advanced monster type that doesn't require a Link monster to come onto the main monster field? Ritual monsters. There is no restriction on ritual summoning, and Vrains represented something of a ritual renaissance for the franchise. The show features several instances of ritual summoning, the most of any series since the original Duel Monsters. 33 of the 114 ritual monsters in the game, or just under 30%, were released during the show's first run in Japan, and the Link monster card art looks kinda like ritual summoning's edgelord younger brother, which kinda makes sense. After all, what is a Link monster? It's a computer program. We see Playmaker assemble them by manipulating data storms throughout the series, and his series of Talker Ace monsters are all based on programming protocols. But what is a program? It's a repeatable series of processes that perform a specific task. And what's a ritual? Archaeologically speaking, it's a series of processes that perform a specific task. Sacrifice 99 villagers and you get 7 Millennium items. Tribute a Karibo to a fierce knight and you get a Blackluster soldier. Compile 4 sub-programs and you get a Firewall dragon. Intelligent enough machines can digitally replicate ritualistic behavior. And suddenly, Link Vrains has the ability to source out additional power for the anemic summoning methods. Speaking of Link monsters, the show's first season doesn't feature any advanced summoning mechanics other than Link summoning, but right off the bat in episode 2 of season 2, Playmaker performs the show's first non-Link special summoning. And who does he call forth? The Dark Magician-inspired ritual monster, Cyburst Magician. A few episodes later, we meet Soulburner's Salamangreat Emerald Eagle before seeing Cyburst Magician again. This means ritual monsters beat Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters to the screen not 1, not 2, but 3 times in this particular series. But there is a hole in our theory. The other 4 dimensions each resemble a specific period in history, a period where their preferred summoning method was at its height. The Fusion dimension features characters and locations from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The Synchro dimension and its cast is pulled right out of 5Ds, and the Xyz dimension looks like a Zexal post-apocalyptic redux. But Alexis Rhodes and Kite Tenjo lived decades apart in the original dimension. Nonetheless, they're somehow the same age in Arc 5, meaning that a ritual dimension should theoretically exist when ritual summoning was at its peak. But when was ritual summoning at its height? Well, we don't really know, but we see the most instances of ritual summoning during the Duel Monsters era of the show, particularly during the Duelist Kingdom and pre-Battle City arcs, suggesting that a ritual dimension would likely be centered around this period. Similar to the world we saw in the original anime, but different. And wouldn't you know, we've already seen a world that's similar to the original anime, but different. In the film Dark Side of Dimensions, we see Kaiba unveil a new boss monster, the ritual-based Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. Moreover, the film's antagonist, Aigami, introduces a brand new, never-before-seen summoning method, the curiously named Dimension Summoning Method. But the most important thing to take note of in this film are the new dual discs that Kaiba unveils during the movie. Blue hologram projectors that store card data as software, so that duelists no longer require physical cards to play the game. These dual discs are functionally identical to the ones seen across Link Vrains. Soul Technologies is widely distributing the technology that Seto Kaiba invented, implying that Vrains takes place after Darkside. They exist on a single timeline, a timeline when this portion of history split off and became the ritual dimension, and where history played out differently from what we saw in the original series. Sure, things are similar. There's a Yugi and a Kaiba who were rivals and who saved the world. But this Yugi and this Kaiba are not the same as this Yugi and this Kaiba. They're actually the same as this Yugi and Kaiba. Yu-Gi-Oh! Creator Kazuki Takahashi, who served as the film's sole credited screenwriter, has definitively stated that the movie serves as a sequel to his original manga and not the animated series produced by Studio Gallop. For anime-only fans, this is why Kaiba seems to have forgotten being present for the ceremonial duel between Yugi and Atem. In the manga, he wasn't there. Kaiba disappeared after the Battle City arc, and remained absent until the Darkside prequel special, Transcend Game. And that, fellow duelists, brings us to the crux of this theory. Today, I propose that the Ritual Dimension is no more than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga timeline, a version of history that was created after the rise of the Supreme King Zark and the fall of the original dimension. As the dimension set in the earliest period in history, and with no Zark fragments running around to fundamentally alter the course of events, this timeline would have continued on, moving into a GX era, then a 5Ds, then on to a Zexal, before reaching a new version of the Arc 5 period, where Zark never rose to power, allowing history to move on to the era of Link Vrains. And this theory is given weight by the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is the first and only Yu-Gi-Oh! Series not to feature a companion manga, with the print version skipping it entirely in favor of publishing an adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s instead. But why would we need a manga if this is, in reality, the story of the manga. But what do you think about this theory? Is this really the story of the ritual dimension, or am I way off the mark? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let me know what your favorite dimension has been so far in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. Personally, I'm going with the Shadow Realm.
The Shadow Realm.
The Shadow Realm?
The Shadow Realm.
You and I will finish this contest in the Shadow Realm, Yugi!
If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go ahead and do that now, as it helps us out in the algorithm and helps me churn out these videos a little bit faster. And we want the next one out as soon as possible, because after a year and a half, I am finally ready to talk about my theory on the one, the only, the complete Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga timeline! I look forward to seeing you all there. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!